My name is Rebecca Winters, and I need to tell you something that's been eating me alive for months now. I'm 30 years old, sitting in my tiny apartment in Chicago, staring at divorce papers that finally came through last week, and I can't stop thinking about how I didn't see it coming. How could I have been so blind? Let me start from the beginning, because if there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that the signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them. I grew up in a small town in Indiana, the kind of place where everyone knows your business and Friday night football is basically a religion. My parents divorced when I was 8, and I watched my mom struggle to make ends meet working 2 jobs while my dad started a whole new family in the next town over. I remember lying in bed at night, listening to her cry in the kitchen after she thought I was asleep, and I promised myself I'd never end up like that. I'd never be financially dependent on anyone. I'd never let a man determine my worth. So I worked my butt off. Straight A's through high school, scholarships to Northwestern, a degree in marketing with honors. I graduated during the recession, and let me tell you, that was rough. I sent out hundreds of applications, worked 3 part-time jobs just to keep my head above water. But I kept pushing. I had to prove to myself, and maybe to my mom too, that all those sacrifices meant something. When I finally landed my first real corporate job at Davidson and Cole Marketing in downtown Chicago, I thought I'd made it. I was 24, living in a shoebox studio that cost way too much, eating ramen most nights, but I was doing it. I was actually doing it. The company was mid-sized, about 200 employees, specializing in digital marketing for tech startups. It was fast-paced, demanding, and I absolutely loved it. I started as a junior account coordinator, basically the bottom of the food chain, but I didn't care. I showed up early, stayed late, volunteered for every project nobody else wanted. Within 2 years, I'd been promoted twice. That's when I met Marcus Holloway. It was a Tuesday morning in March, unseasonably warm for Chicago. I remember because I'd actually walked to work instead of taking the L, and I was feeling pretty good about life. Our department was expanding, and they'd just hired 2 new senior marketing strategists. Marcus was one of them. He walked into the conference room for the team introduction meeting, and, I'm not gonna lie, my first thought was purely superficial. He was gorgeous. Tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair that was just messy enough to look intentional, warm brown eyes, and this smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He wore his suit like he was born in it, confident but not cocky. At least that's what I thought then. Our boss, Janet, introduced him and the other new hire, and Marcus made some joke about being terrible with names, so please be patient with him. Everyone laughed. He seemed charming, genuine, approachable. All the things that turned out to be a carefully constructed mask. We didn't really interact much those first few weeks. He was settling into his role. I was buried in a major campaign for a fintech client. But there was this moment in the break room, maybe 3 weeks after he started. I was stress-eating a donut at like 3 in the afternoon, probably looking half dead because I'd been up until 2 a.m. working on revisions, and he walked in to refill his coffee. "Rough day?" he asked, and his voice had this warmth to it that caught me off guard. "Rough month," I said, laughing a little. "But the donut helps." "Donut therapy. I respect that." He smiled, grabbed his coffee, and then surprised me by sitting down at the small table. "You're Rebecca, right? You work on the Innovate financial account." I nodded, slightly impressed he knew. "Yeah, that's me. You're Marcus, senior strategist, recently escaped from wherever you worked before." He laughed at that. Escaped is a strong word. Let's say I strategically relocated. "I heard you've been killing it here. Janet mentioned you basically saved the TechWave campaign last quarter." I felt my face get hot. I'm terrible at taking compliments. Always have been. I mean, it was a team effort. Humble too. Noted. He stood up, grabbed his coffee. "Well, if you ever need an extra set of eyes on anything, I'm around. I know how brutal those all-nighters can be." And that was it. Nothing dramatic, nothing inappropriate. Just a colleague being nice. But looking back now, I wonder if that was the moment he started gathering information. Figuring out who I was, what made me tick, where my vulnerabilities were. Over the next few months, we became friends. Real friends, or at least that's what it felt like. We'd grab lunch together, sometimes with other coworkers, sometimes just us. We'd vent about difficult clients, share strategies, recommend podcasts and articles. He was easy to talk to, funny, smart as hell. He'd worked at a bigger agency in New York before Davidson and Cole, had all these stories about nightmare clients and industry drama. I told him things I didn't tell most people. About growing up watching my mom struggle. About my dad showing up to my college graduation with his new wife and acting like nothing was wrong. About how I sometimes felt like I was running on a treadmill, working so hard but never quite getting where I wanted to be. He listened. God, he was good at listening. Made you feel heard, validated, understood. He told me about his own family, his parents who'd sacrificed everything to put him through school, how he felt this constant pressure to succeed, to make it all worth it. We bonded over that shared hunger, that drive to prove ourselves. The first time he asked me out was after a particularly brutal week in August. We'd both been working on separate pitches, barely slept, living on coffee and takeout. Friday evening, most people had already left, and we ended up in the break room at the same time, both looking equally wrecked. We survived, he said, raising his sad coffee cup in a mock toast. Barely, I said, but I was smiling. There was something about surviving the trenches together that creates this weird camaraderie. Hey, so, this might be terrible timing given we both look like extras from a zombie movie, but would you want to grab dinner sometime? Like actual dinner, not sad desk salads. Maybe this weekend. My heart did this stupid flutter thing. I'd been attracted to him for a while, obviously, but I'd convinced myself it was just friendly. We worked together, it would be complicated. I didn't have time for dating anyway. All the usual excuses. But standing there, looking at him looking at me with this hopeful, slightly nervous expression that made him seem more human and less like the polished professional he always was at work, I couldn't think of a single good reason to say no. Yeah, I said. Yeah, I'd like that. Our first date was at this Italian place in Lincoln Park, nothing too fancy, but nice enough. We talked for 3 hours straight. He was attentive, asked questions, remembered details from conversations we'd had weeks before. He walked me home even though it was out of his way, didn't try to kiss me, just said he'd had a great time and hoped we could do it again. We could. We did. By September, we were officially together, and I was happier than I'd been in years. Marcus was everything I thought I wanted. Ambitious but not ruthless, successful but not arrogant, supportive of my career, proud of my accomplishments. When I got promoted to senior account manager in October, he took me out to celebrate, told everyone who'd listen how talented I was, how much I deserved it. The company had a policy against dating within the same department, but technically we weren't direct reports to each other, and we were discreet. We didn't advertise it, but we didn't hide it either. A few people knew, most suspected. It felt like we were building something real together, both in our careers and in our relationship. We moved in together that December. His place was bigger than mine, a 2-bedroom in Wicker Park with actual closet space and a kitchen you could turn around in. It felt like a natural progression, the next step. We fell into routines. Morning coffee together before work, Netflix and takeout on weeknights, exploring the city on weekends. Normal couple stuff. He met my mom in January. We drove down to Indiana for a weekend, and I was nervous because my mom can be intense, but Marcus handled it perfectly. He asked about her job, complimented her cooking, looked through old photo albums without making it weird. On the drive back, he said he could see where I got my strength from, and I actually teared up a little. I met his parents over video call since they lived in California. They seemed nice, warm, proud of their son. By June, the Vertex campaign was in full swing, and I was operating on pure adrenaline and spite. The spite part was new. Something had shifted between Marcus and me, and I couldn't quite pinpoint when it happened. We were living in the same apartment, sleeping in the same bed, but it felt like we were strangers passing in a hallway. The comments continued. Always subtle, always with this veneer of concern that made me feel guilty for being annoyed. You look exhausted, Beck. Maybe you should take a day off. Are you sure you want to take on that additional scope? Seems like a lot. I heard some rumblings that the Vertex CEO is difficult to work with. Just be careful. Every single comment designed to make me doubt myself, to make me feel like I was doing too much, reaching too far, about to fail. But I pushed through because that's what I've always done. I don't quit. I don't back down. My mom didn't raise a quitter. The rest of the team noticed the change too. My colleague Sarah, who'd become a good friend, pulled me aside one day in early July. "Hey, is everything okay with you and Marcus?" she asked, keeping her voice low even though we were in the coffee shop down the street from the office. "Yeah, why?" I was genuinely confused. At work, Marcus and I were professional. We didn't advertise our relationship, but we weren't hiding it either. Sarah hesitated, stirring her iced coffee. "It's probably nothing, but I overheard him talking to Devin yesterday. They were in the break room, didn't know I was in the supply closet grabbing printer paper. Marcus was saying something about how the Vertex project was probably too much for one person to handle, how it needed a more collaborative approach." My stomach dropped. What did Devin say? He agreed, actually. Said something about how it's risky to have so much riding on one account manager, even a senior one. Then they saw me and changed the subject. I sat there, my coffee getting watery with melted ice, trying to process. Devin was the director of our department, Janet's second in command. If he was having doubts about my ability to handle Vertex, that was a problem. A big problem. Did it seem like, I don't know, like Marcus was trying to undermine me? I asked, hating how paranoid I sounded. Sarah's face said everything. "Look, I don't want to cause problems in your relationship. But yeah, it felt weird. Like he was building a case or something." I went back to the office with my head spinning. I didn't confront Marcus. What was I going to say? "Hey, are you sabotaging my career?" Based on secondhand information? He'd just deny it, make me feel crazy for even thinking it. So I did what I always do. I worked harder. I documented everything, made sure every decision was backed up with data, every strategy approved by multiple stakeholders. If someone was going to question my competence, they'd have to go through mountains of proof first. The Vertex campaign was progressing beautifully. The client was happy, the creative was strong, the metrics were exceeding projections. We were tracking for a launch in September, and everyone on the team was fired up. This was the kind of success story that gets featured in industry publications, the kind of campaign that defines agencies. In mid-July, Marcus suggested we take a weekend trip to Michigan, get out of the city, reconnect. I was hesitant because I had so much work, but he pushed. "Beck, we barely see each other anymore. When's the last time we did something just for us? No work talk, no laptops, just you and me." He was right. I couldn't remember the last time we'd had an actual conversation that wasn't me venting about work or him making passive-aggressive comments. Maybe getting away would help. Maybe I was being too sensitive about the whole Devin thing. Maybe we just needed to reset. We drove up to South Haven on a Friday afternoon, checked into this cute bed and breakfast right on the beach. It was beautiful, exactly the kind of romantic getaway that should have fixed things. We walked on the beach, had dinner at a seafood place with amazing views, went back to our room, and actually talked like we used to. He apologized for being distant. "I know I've been weird about the Vertex thing. I think I'm just jealous, honestly. You're doing something huge, and I'm over here working on the same mid-level accounts I've had for months. It's not your fault. I'm sorry." I wanted to believe him so badly. I wanted everything to be okay, to go back to how it was when we first got together. So I accepted his apology, told him I understood, that we'd both been stressed, that things would calm down after the campaign launched. We made love that night, and it felt different. Desperate, almost. Like we were both trying to hold on to something that was already slipping away. I fell asleep in his arms, listening to the waves outside our window, and for a moment I let myself believe we'd be okay. Saturday was perfect. We slept in, had breakfast at this little diner, spent the afternoon at a winery, laughed like we used to. I didn't check my work email once. Neither did he. It felt like old times. Sunday morning I woke up early, couldn't help myself, and grabbed my phone to quickly skim my emails. There was one from Janet, sent late Saturday night, marked urgent. My heart sank. "Rebecca, can you call me when you get this? Need to discuss some concerns about the Vertex account. Nothing urgent, but want to touch base Monday morning before the week starts." Concerns. About Vertex. My Vertex. I must have made some noise because Marcus woke up, rolled over. Everything okay? I need to call Janet. She sent an email about Vertex. His face did that thing again, that flicker I couldn't read. On a Sunday morning? Can't it wait until we get back? She said to call her. I was already up, pulling on clothes. I'll be quick. I went outside, walked down to the beach where I could hear over the wind, and called Janet. She answered on the second ring. Rebecca, hi. Sorry to bother you on the weekend. It's fine. What's going on with Vertex? She sighed, and my stomach dropped further. I got a call from Devin Friday evening. He expressed some concerns about the project scope, said he'd been hearing things that worried him about the timeline and deliverables. I told him everything looked fine from my end, but he pushed back. Said he'd been talking to some of the team members who were feeling stretched thin.
What?
Janet, the team is fine. We're ahead of schedule on every milestone. Who said they were stretched thin? He wouldn't give me names, said people came to him confidentially. Look, I don't think this is a big deal, but I wanted to give you a heads up. Devin's going to want a full status meeting Monday afternoon. Just come prepared with all your documentation. Show him what I already know, that you've got this handled. We talked for another 10 minutes, her reassuring me trying not to panic. When I hung up, I stood there on the beach, watching the waves, feeling the walls closing in. Marcus came down a few minutes later, 2 cups of coffee in hand. What did she say? I told him everything. About Devin, about the concerns, about the team supposedly feeling stretched thin. I watched his face carefully as I talked, looking for something, anything that might confirm Sarah's suspicions. That's weird, he said, handing me a coffee. I haven't heard anyone on the team complaining. If anything, everyone seems pumped about Vertex. Right? That's what I thought. So where's this coming from? He shook his head, put his arm around me. Corporate politics, probably. Devin's always been a micromanager. I'm sure it's nothing. You'll go in Monday, show him your documentation, and it'll be fine. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. We drove back to Chicago that afternoon. The easy comfort from Saturday completely evaporated. I spent the drive mentally preparing for Monday's meeting, going through every possible concern Devin could raise and planning my responses. Marcus was quiet, occasionally reaching over to squeeze my hand, but I could feel the distance again. Like the weekend had been a brief timeout from whatever was really happening between us. Monday morning, I was at the office by 7. I printed out everything. Every timeline, every budget report, every client communication, every team meeting note. I built a presentation that walked through the entire campaign from inception to current status, with data backing up every single decision. The meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. At noon, Sarah came to my desk, her face pale. Rebecca, we need to talk. Privately. We went to one of the small conference rooms, the ones without windows that people use for difficult conversations. She closed the door, sat down, and her hands were shaking. I think Marcus is behind the complaints to Devin. My heart stopped.
What?
Why would you think that? I was CC'd on an email chain by mistake this morning. Devin was talking to Marcus and a couple other people about the Vertex project. Marcus was outlining all these concerns, talking about how the scope was too ambitious, how the timeline was unrealistic, how there were team members afraid to speak up about being overwhelmed. Rebecca, every single concern Devin mentioned to Janet came from Marcus. She pulled out her phone, showed me the email chain. And there it was. In black and white. Marcus systematically undermining everything I'd built, questioning my judgment, suggesting that the project needed a more collaborative leadership approach, heavily implying that I was in over my head. I read through the emails once, twice, 3 times, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. This was the man I lived with, the man I trusted with my vulnerabilities, my fears, my ambitions. The man who'd held me while I cried about my dad, who'd met my mom, who'd talked about our future together. There's more, Sarah said quietly. The last email in the chain, Marcus volunteers himself to step in as co-lead on the campaign. Says he has experience with IPO marketing from his time in New York, that he could help shoulder the load, make sure nothing falls through the cracks. Co-lead. He didn't just want to undermine me. He wanted to take my place. Or at least take credit for my work. I sat there in that windowless conference room, staring at Sarah's phone, and something inside me broke. Not in the way you'd expect, not with tears or anger.
It was colder than that.
Clearer. Like someone had turned on the lights in a dark room, and I could finally see all the furniture I'd been tripping over. I need copies of these emails, I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised me. I already forwarded them to your personal email. I knew you'd need them. I hugged her, quickly, fiercely. Thank you for looking out for me. Go show Devin what you're made of, she said. And then figure out what you're going to do about Marcus. The meeting with Devin and Janet started at 2. I walked in with my presentation, my documentation, and a quiet fury that I kept locked behind a professional smile. Devin started with his concerns, all of them clearly pulled from Marcus's emails. I addressed each one methodically, with data. No, the timeline wasn't unrealistic. Here's our progress against milestones. No, the scope wasn't too ambitious. Here's client feedback and approval at every stage. No, the team wasn't overwhelmed. Here's our resource allocation and weekly check-in notes where everyone confirmed they were on track. For every concern, I had an answer. For every doubt, I had proof. I presented for 45 minutes straight, and by the end, Devin looked uncomfortable and Janet looked vindicated. Well, Devin said, clearing his throat, this is clearly well under control. I apologize for wasting your time, Rebecca. I was operating on secondhand information that seems to have been, let's say, overstated. Can I ask where the information came from? I asked, keeping my voice neutral even though I already knew the answer. Devin and Janet exchanged a look. Some team members reached out with concerns, Devin said vaguely. Team members or one specific colleague with his own agenda? Another look between them. Janet leaned forward. Rebecca, what are you saying? So I told them. Not about Marcus and me personally, they didn't need to know that. But about the emails Sarah had been copied on, about the pattern of undermining, about the convenient volunteering to take over my project. Janet's face went hard. Devin looked like he'd swallowed something sour. I need to see those emails, Janet said. I'd already forwarded them from my personal account to my work email, in case this came up. I pulled them up on my laptop, turned it around so they could read. The room was silent except for the sound of Devin's breathing getting heavier as he scrolled through Marcus's systematic sabotage. This is completely inappropriate, Janet finally said. This is, I don't even know what this is. Unethical. Unprofessional. Potentially actionable. I want to be clear, I said. I can handle the Vertex campaign. I've proven that today. But I need to know that my department director has my back, that I'm not going to be constantly defending myself against manufactured concerns while I'm trying to do the biggest project of my career. You have my full support, Janet said immediately. And Devin, I think you and I need to have a separate conversation about verification of information and the chain of command. Devin nodded, looking miserable. Absolutely. Rebecca, I owe you an apology. I should have come directly to you or Janet with these concerns instead of taking them at face value. It won't happen again. I left that meeting feeling victorious and completely hollow at the same time. I'd won the battle for my project, but I'd lost something bigger. The relationship I thought I had, the future I'd imagined, it was all built on sand. Marcus was at his desk when I walked by, and I saw him look up, try to catch my eye. I kept walking. I couldn't look at him yet. If I looked at him, I'd lose the cold, clear focus that was the only thing holding me together. I worked until 8 that night, buried myself in Vertex revisions, responded to client emails, scheduled team meetings. Normal Monday stuff. Pretending everything was fine because the alternative was falling apart at my desk, and I wasn't going to give anyone that satisfaction. Marcus texted around 6. Hey, how'd the meeting go? Want me to pick up dinner? I stared at the text for a full minute before responding. Meeting went fine. Not hungry. Going to be late. When I finally got home around 9, he was on the couch watching TV. The apartment smelled like Chinese takeout. He'd gotten my favorite from the place on the corner. Hey, he said, muting the TV, and standing up. I saved you some kung pao. I know you said you weren't hungry, but I thought you might want something. This was the man who'd systematically tried to destroy my career. And he bought me kung pao chicken. I know about the emails, I said. His face went blank. Not surprised, not guilty. Just blank. Like he was calculating his next move. What emails? Don't insult me by lying. I know about the emails to Devon. I know you've been undermining me. I know you volunteered yourself to take over my project. I know everything. He stood there for a moment and I watched him decide how to play this. I could see it in his eyes, the rapid assessment of what I knew, what I could prove, what angle would work best. Okay, he said finally. Okay. Can we sit down and talk about this? I don't want to sit down. I want you to tell me why. Why would you do this to me? He ran his hand through his hair, that gesture that used to seem endearing and now just looked manipulative. It's not what you think. Then what is it? Explain it to me. I was trying to help. The project is huge, Beck, and you're drowning in it. I could see it, everyone could see it. You're working yourself to death, you're stressed all the time, you barely sleep. I thought if I could get Devon to see that you needed support, that it would actually help you. The audacity of it. The absolute audacity. By volunteering yourself as co-lead? By telling Devon I was in over my head? That was helping.
Yes.
Because you are in over your head. You're too proud to admit it, too stubborn to ask for help, so I was trying to help you in the only way I could. By taking credit for my work. By positioning yourself to benefit from my project. That's not help, Marcus. That's sabotage. You're being dramatic. Don't. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Don't you dare minimize this. I stood in that meeting today and had to defend myself against your lies. I had to prove my competence because you spent weeks telling our director I wasn't capable. Do you understand what you almost did to me? To my career? Nothing happened. You're fine. The project is fine. Because I fought back. Because I had documentation. Because Sarah accidentally got copied on your emails and warned me. What if she hadn't? What if I'd walked into that meeting unprepared? What if Devon had already made up his mind based on your bullshit concerns? He was pacing now, and I could see him getting angry.
Good.
At least it was honest. You want to know the truth? He said, turning to face me.
Fine.
Here's the truth. You got that project because of luck. Because the client happened to like your previous work. But you're not ready for something this big. You don't have the experience, you don't have the strategic vision. I do. I've done IPO campaigns before, I know what it takes, and I've been watching you struggle for months. I'm not struggling. I'm succeeding. You're barely holding it together. And instead of being smart and accepting help, you're too proud, too insecure to admit you might need someone else's expertise. And there it was. The real Marcus. The one who'd been hiding behind the supportive boyfriend act for the past year.
Get out, I said.
What? Get out of my apartment. Tonight. Pack a bag. Go to a hotel, I don't care. But I want you out. Beck, come on. Let's not do this. Let's talk about it tomorrow when we've both calmed down. I am calm. I've never been calmer in my life. You tried to sabotage my career, so you could advance your own. You lied to me for months. You made me doubt myself, question my abilities, made me feel like I was being paranoid when I suspected something was wrong. That's emotional abuse, Marcus. That's manipulation. And I want you out of my home. He stared at me, and I saw him realize I was serious. Saw him calculate whether there was any angle left to play, any way to salvage this. Fine, he said finally.
Fine.
I'll go. But you're making a mistake. You're letting your pride destroy what we have. What we have is over. I'll pack up your stuff this week. You can pick it up this weekend. He grabbed his keys, his phone, shoved some clothes in a gym bag from a closet. The whole time, I stood there in the living room, arms crossed, watching him, making sure he actually left. At the door, he turned back. You know what your problem is, Rebecca? You think you have to do everything alone. You think asking for help makes you weak. That's going to keep you lonely for the rest of your life. Better lonely than with someone who sees me as competition instead of a partner. He left, slamming the door hard enough that the pictures on the wall rattled. I stood there in the sudden silence of the apartment, and that's when the shaking started. My hands first, then my whole body. I made it to the couch before my legs gave out, and I sat there in the dim light from the TV he'd left running, processing what had just happened. I'd ended it. I'd actually ended it. The relationship I'd thought was leading to marriage, to a family, to the life I'd always imagined. I picked up my phone, called my mom. She answered on the third ring, her voice sleepy. It was almost 11, and she had work in the morning. "Rebecca? Honey, what's wrong?" And just like that, hearing her voice, I started crying.
Not pretty crying.
Ugly, gasping sobs that made it hard to breathe, hard to talk. All the adrenaline from the day, all the anger, all the betrayal, it came pouring out. "Baby, talk to me. What happened?" So I told her. Everything. The emails, the meeting, the confrontation, Marcus leaving. She listened without interrupting, and when I finally ran out of words, she was quiet for a moment. "I never liked him," she said finally. "Mom, I didn't. Something about him always felt off. Too polished, you know? Like he was performing instead of being real. But you seem happy, so I kept my mouth shut. I should have said something. It wouldn't have mattered. I wouldn't have listened. Probably not. You're stubborn like your mother." I could hear her moving around, probably making tea.
She always made tea when she was stressed.
"Listen to me, Rebecca. What he did, that's not about you. That's about him. He saw you succeeding, saw you getting recognition he thought he deserved, and instead of being happy for you, he tried to tear you down. That's his failure, not yours." I let him move in. I trusted him. I told him things about myself I've never told anyone. How could I not see what he really was? Because people like that are good at hiding. They know how to say the right things, how to make you feel special until you're invested. Then they show you who they really are. But here's the thing, baby. You did see it. When it mattered, when you had the proof, you didn't make excuses for him. You didn't try to convince yourself it was okay. You kicked him out. That takes strength. We talked until almost midnight. She made me promise to call her tomorrow, to take care of myself, to not work so hard I forgot to eat. Mom stuff. Normal stuff. The kind of conversation that reminded me I had people in my corner, even when I felt completely alone. After we hung up, I walked through the apartment. It was weird how empty it felt even though Marcus had only taken one bag. His presence was everywhere. His coffee mug in the sink, his jacket on the chair, his books on the shelf, his side of the bed. I slept on the couch that night. Couldn't bring myself to get into the bed we'd shared. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and a headache that felt like someone was using my brain as a drum. I called in sick to work, the first time I'd done that in over a year. Janet texted back immediately. "Take the day. Hell, take the week if you need it. You've earned it and Vertex can wait 24 hours. Take care of yourself." But I couldn't just sit in the apartment surrounded by Marcus's stuff, so I did what any reasonable person does in a crisis. I went to Target, bought trash bags and boxes, and started packing up his life. It was therapeutic in a weird way. Every shirt I folded, every book I boxed up, felt like reclaiming my space. I found his fancy watch in the bathroom, the one he was always so careful with. For a second, I considered accidentally dropping it, but I'm not that person. So I wrapped it carefully and put it in the box with his other valuables. By the afternoon, I had everything organized. 6 boxes, 2 bags of clothes, 1 very full trash bag of random stuff he'd accumulated. I stacked it all by the door, took a picture and texted him. "Your stuff is packed. Let me know when you want to pick it up. I won't be here." He responded an hour later. "Can we talk?" I think we both said things we didn't mean last night. I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me, the part that had loved him, that had imagined a future with him, wanted to believe that maybe we'd both overreacted. Maybe there was a way to fix this. But then I remembered the emails, the months of subtle undermining, the way he'd called me dramatic and insecure when I confronted him. "There's nothing to talk about. When do you want your stuff?" This is really how you want to end things? After everything we've been through? You ended things when you tried to sabotage my career. I'm just making it official. He didn't respond after that. Sarah came over that evening with wine and Chinese food, different from what Marcus had gotten the night before. We sat on my couch, and she let me vent, cry, rage, and then laugh at the absurdity of it all. The worst part, I said, probably on my third glass of wine, is that I feel stupid. Like I should have seen it sooner. There were signs, you know? Little comments, weird moments. But I talked myself out of trusting my gut. That's what manipulative people do, Sarah said. They make you doubt your instincts. They make you feel crazy for noticing what you're noticing.
You're not stupid, Beck.
You're human. I really thought he was different. I thought we were building something real.
I know. And that sucks. It really, really sucks.
But you know what? You dodged a bullet. Imagine if you'd married this guy, had kids with him. Imagine dealing with this 10 years from now when you're even more entangled. She was right.
I knew she was right.
But it didn't make it hurt less. I went back to work on Wednesday. Walked in with my head high, ready for the awkwardness of everyone knowing my personal drama. But if people were gossiping, they kept it away from me. Janet pulled me aside first thing. How are you holding up? I'm okay, ready to get back to it.
Good.
Because I have news. Devin and I met with HR yesterday about Marcus's conduct. What he did, undermining a colleague's project, spreading false information to management, it violates several company policies. We're moving him to a different department, effective immediately. He won't be working anywhere near you or Vertex. I felt a rush of relief and vindication. Thank you for taking this seriously. Rebecca, you're one of the most talented people we have. What he did was not only wrong, it was stupid. We're not losing you because some insecure guy can't handle a woman being better at the job than him. Marcus's new desk was on a different floor, in a different division. I didn't see him for the rest of the week, which was good because I had no idea what I'd say if I did. The Vertex campaign continued to go smoothly. The client was thrilled with our progress, the creative was testing well, and we were on track for a September launch that would be spectacular. Every success felt like a personal victory, proof that I was exactly as capable as I knew I was.
Marcus picked up his stuff that Saturday.
I made sure I wasn't home, went to a yoga class, and then brunch with Sarah, took my time getting back. When I returned, the boxes were gone, and there was a note on the kitchen counter. I'm sorry for how things ended. I hope you can forgive me someday.
I really did care about you.
I read it once, crumpled it up, and threw it in the trash. Too little, too late, and probably not even sincere. Just another manipulation, trying to rewrite history, make himself the misunderstood good guy. July passed in a blur of work. I threw myself into Vertex completely, worked nights and weekends, barely came up for air. My team was amazing, everyone pulling together, excited to be part of something big. We had weekly check-ins where I made sure everyone was actually okay, not just saying they were okay, because that's what you do with your boss. How are you really doing? I asked Tom, one of our junior designers, during a one-on-one. Honestly, if it's too much, I need to know. Honestly, this is the best project I've ever worked on. Yeah, it's intense, but it's also exciting. I'm learning so much. Please don't take me off it. That was the theme. Everyone was tired, but energized. Challenged, but not overwhelmed. Working hard, but feeling valued. Everything Marcus had claimed was the opposite of reality. I ran into him in the elevator one day, in early August. It was unavoidable, one of those awkward moments where we were both getting in on the ground floor, just us and the crushing silence. Hey, he said as the doors closed. I nodded, kept my eyes forward. How have you been? Fine. The Vertex campaign is looking good. I saw the preliminary metrics. Of course he did. Still keeping tabs. Thanks. Rebecca, I really am sorry. About everything. I handled things badly. The elevator reached his floor. The doors opened. He hesitated. I hope we can eventually be friends again. Or, at least friendly. I hope you learn to be a better person, I said. But I won't be around to see it. He stepped out, and the doors closed. My hands were shaking, but I'd said what I needed to say. No anger, no drama. Just the truth. August was brutal in terms of weather. Chicago summers are no joke, and the city felt like a sauna. But we were in the final push for Vertex, and the energy was electric. The launch was scheduled for September 15th, and everything was coming together perfectly. I was at the office late on a Thursday, around 8 p.m., finalizing some presentation materials, when I felt it. This wave of nausea that came out of nowhere. I barely made it to the bathroom before I threw up, which was weird because I hadn't eaten anything strange, hadn't been feeling sick. Must be stress, I thought. Or exhaustion. I'd been running on fumes for months. But the nausea came back the next morning. And the morning after that. By Monday, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I stopped at CVS on my way to work, bought a pregnancy test, and sat in the office bathroom at 7 a.m., staring at 2 pink lines. Pregnant. I was pregnant. With Marcus's baby. I sat there on that cold bathroom floor in the handicap stall because it had more space, and my brain just couldn't process. This wasn't possible. We'd been careful. I was on the pill. Took it religiously, same time every day. But no birth control is 100%. And apparently, I was in the unlucky percentage. I called my doctor from my car, got an emergency appointment for that afternoon. Sat through the morning meeting with the Vertex team in a daze, smiled and nodded in the right places, felt like I was watching my life from outside my body. The doctor confirmed it. 6 weeks pregnant. Due date in late March. Perfectly healthy so far. Did I have any questions? Just one. How was this my life? I drove around for an hour after the appointment, no destination, just driving.
Processing.
I was 30 years old, single, in the middle of the biggest career moment of my life, and pregnant by a man who'd tried to destroy me professionally. This was not the plan. This was never the plan. I had options. I knew that. This was my choice, my body, my life. But even as I thought about it, I knew what I was going to do. Not because of any moral stance, not because of societal pressure, but because somewhere in the chaos of my mind, I realized I wanted this. Not like this, not with Marcus, not now. But I wanted it. Maybe it was thinking about my mom, raising me alone, sacrificing everything, showing me what strength really looked like. Maybe it was knowing I was strong enough to do this, successful enough to support myself and a child, stubborn enough to make it work no matter what. Or maybe it was just that after months of Marcus trying to make me feel small and incapable, this was the ultimate proof that I could do hard things. I could launch a massive campaign. I could end a toxic relationship. I could raise a child on my own. I could do anything. But first, I had to tell Marcus. The thought made me want to throw up again, and this time it wasn't morning sickness. I texted him that evening. We need to talk. In person. It's important. He responded immediately. Of course. When? Tomorrow. Coffee shop on State Street. Noon. I'll be there. I didn't sleep that night. Kept playing out the conversation in my head, trying to anticipate every possible response. Would he be angry? Suspicious? Would he accuse me of trying to trap him? Would he want to be involved, or would he walk away? Part of me hoped he'd walk away. Part of me was terrified he wouldn't. The next day, I got to the coffee shop 15 minutes early, ordered a decaf latte that tasted like regret, and sat at a corner table where I could see the door. Marcus walked in at exactly noon, saw me, and his face did something complicated. He got his coffee, sat down across from me. We hadn't been alone together since the night I kicked him out. Looking at him now, I tried to find the person I'd loved, but all I could see was the person who'd betrayed me. Thanks for meeting me, I said. Of course. What's going on? Are you okay?
Just say it.
Rip the Band-Aid off. I'm pregnant. I watched him process the words. Saw confusion, then shock, then something that might have been panic. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. You're how we always, I don't understand. Birth control fails sometimes. I found out this week. I'm about 6 weeks along. 6 weeks. So it's mine? The question shouldn't have surprised me, but it still stung. Yes, Marcus. It's yours. We were together then. I haven't been with anyone else. Obviously. He ran his hands through his hair, that gesture I used to find endearing and now just found irritating. Okay. What do you want to do? I'm keeping it. That's not up for discussion. What is up for discussion is what level of involvement you want. You're keeping it, he repeated, like the words weren't making sense. Rebecca, think about this. You're in the middle of a huge project, your career is finally taking off. A baby right now would derail everything. My career will be fine. I can have both. Can you? Really? Do you know how demanding a baby is? The sleepless nights, the constant needs, the expense? And you'd be doing it alone? Not alone. I have my mom, I have friends, I have resources. What I'm asking is if I'll also have you. As a co-parent. Not as a couple. I clarified quickly when I saw his face change. That's over. But as parents. Do you want to be involved? He sat back, and I could see him calculating. What this meant for him, for his life, for his career. Not what it meant for the baby, or for me. I need time to think about this, he said finally. Okay. How much time? I don't know. A week? This is a lot to process, Beck. You've had a few days, I've had 5 minutes. Fair enough. I gave him a week. He texted me 6 days later, asked to meet at the same coffee shop. I knew from his face before he even sat down what his answer would be. I can't do this, he said. I'm not ready to be a father. I'm not in a place in my life where I can take on that responsibility. Financially or emotionally? Both. All of it. I'm sorry, but I think it's better if I'm not involved. I'll sign whatever you need me to sign, give up parental rights, whatever. But I can't be a dad right now. Part of me was relieved. Part of me was furious. You know what? Fine. If that's how you feel, I don't want you around my kid anyway. But let me be clear about something. You don't get to change your mind later. You don't get to show up in 5 years when it's convenient and want to play dad. You're making a choice right now, and it's permanent. I understand. And Rebecca, for what it's worth, I do think you'll be a good mom. You're strong enough to do this. Yeah, well, you try to convince me I wasn't strong enough to do my job. Forgive me if I don't put much stock in your opinion of my capabilities. I left him there with his coffee and his cowardice. Went back to work, back to Vertex, back to building the life I was going to give my child. A life that didn't include Marcus Holloway in any capacity. The Vertex campaign launched on September 15th, and it was everything I'd hoped for and more. The client was ecstatic, the media coverage was incredible, the industry buzz was off the charts. We were trending on Twitter, featured in Adweek, getting inquiries from potential clients who wanted to work with the team that pulled off the Vertex launch. Janet called me into her office the day after launch, and Devin was there too. For a second, I felt that old panic, but their faces were happy. Rebecca, Janet said, we wanted to be the first to tell you officially. You're being promoted to Vice President of Strategic Accounts, effective immediately. Salary increase, corner office, the works. You earned this. I cried. Right there in Janet's office, I cried. From relief, from joy, from exhaustion, from pregnancy hormones probably. Devin looked uncomfortable, but Janet just handed me a tissue and smiled. Thank you, I managed. Thank you for believing in me. You made it easy, she said. I told my team about the pregnancy a week later. Gathered everyone in the conference room, the same people who'd worked tirelessly on Vertex, and just laid it out. So, I have some personal news. I'm pregnant. Due in March. I'll be taking maternity leave, obviously, but I'm not going anywhere. This team is my family, and I'm excited to have an actual family to come back to after the baby arrives. Sarah started clapping, and then everyone joined in, and I got hugs and congratulations and questions about names and nursery themes. It felt good. It felt right. Like I was finally building the life I actually wanted, not the one I thought I was supposed to want. Marcus left Davidson and Cole in October. I heard through the grapevine that he'd gotten a job at a smaller agency, lateral move, nothing special. I felt nothing when I heard. Not satisfaction. Not sadness, nothing. He was just someone I used to know, a chapter I'd closed. October turned into November, November into December. My belly grew, the baby kicked, and I fell in love with someone I hadn't even met yet. I worked through my second trimester, refused to slow down even when my team tried to make me take it easy. "I'm pregnant, not dying," I told Sarah when she suggested I skip a late client meeting. "I've got this." And I did. I had this. I had my career, my apartment that I'd completely redecorated to include a nursery, my mom who called every day, my team who had my back. I had everything I needed. I just didn't realize I was about to lose some of it. The holidays were weird. First Thanksgiving without Marcus. First Christmas preparing for a baby I'd be raising alone. My mom came up from Indiana for both, stayed in the nursery since I hadn't bought the crib yet, and we did that whole mother-daughter bonding thing that movies make look heartwarming, but is actually just a lot of assembly instructions and debates about paint colors. "You sure you want gray?" she asked for the 100th time, eyeing the wall samples. "What happened to yellow?" "Yellow is happy. Gray is sophisticated, Mom. And I'm getting yellow accents." "See." I held up the curtains I'd ordered online, a soft butter yellow with white elephants. Elephants. When I had you, everything was ducks. Ducks on everything. Well, this is 2025, not 1995. Elephants are in. She laughed, pulled me into a hug that was getting harder to navigate around my belly. "I'm proud of you, baby. You know that, right? Not every woman could do what you're doing. You did it." "Yeah, but I didn't have a choice. Your dad left, and I had to figure it out. You're choosing this. That's different. That's braver." I didn't feel brave. Most days I felt terrified. But I didn't tell her that because she was looking at me like I'd hung the moon, and I needed someone to believe I had this figured out, even if I didn't. Work was going well. The Vertex success had brought in 3 new major clients, all wanting the same level of strategic insight and creative execution. My team had expanded, I'd hired 2 new people, and I was juggling more accounts than I'd ever managed before, while also growing a human inside my body and dealing with the joys of maternity clothes that never fit quite right and random strangers touching my belly in elevators. January hit Chicago like a freight train of snow and misery. I was 7 months pregnant, waddling more than walking, and starting to get real about the fact that I had 2 months to finish everything before the baby arrived. I'd plan my maternity leave meticulously. 3 months off, Sarah would cover my accounts. I'd stay in touch remotely for any emergencies, but mostly I'd be focusing on being a new mom. The plan was solid. The plan made sense. The plan didn't account for Marcus's vindictiveness. It started with an email. Not to me, but to several members of my team, and it got forwarded to me by Tom, the junior designer who'd been worried I'd take him off Vertex. "Hey Rebecca, you should see this. It's weird." The email was from Marcus's personal account, sent to 5 people on my team. The subject line was some concerns about leadership. I opened it, and my blood went cold. The email was long, carefully worded to sound concerned rather than malicious. It talked about how pregnancy affects cognitive function, how hormones can impact decision-making, how it might be irresponsible to leave such important accounts in the hands of someone who is about to be overwhelmed with a newborn. It suggested, very gently, that maybe people should start looking at other opportunities because things at Davidson and Cole might get unstable under my distracted leadership. It was poison wrapped in care. It was sabotage disguised as worry. And it had my team's names on it. People who trusted me, who'd worked with me for years, who'd celebrated my pregnancy announcement. I forwarded the email to Janet immediately, then called an emergency team meeting. All 5 people who'd received the email were there, plus Sarah, plus a few others I wanted looped in. "I'm assuming you've all seen the email from Marcus Holloway." I started, keeping my voice steady, even though I wanted to scream. "I want to address it directly, because I won't let lies fester. First, yes, I'm pregnant. You all know this. Second, my cognitive function is fine, my decision-making is sound, and I'm not distracted. If anything, I'm more focused than ever because I'm building something for my child. Third, if Marcus had any real concerns about this team or this company, he'd have reached out to management, not sent a weird manifesto to my employees from his personal email like some kind of corporate conspiracy theorist." A few people laughed nervously. Tom raised his hand. "Rebecca, for what it's worth, we all deleted it. Nobody took it seriously. Marcus he's had issues before. We know that. I appreciate that. But I want to be clear that if anyone does have concerns about my ability to lead this team, my door is always open. Don't let some guy with an agenda make you question what you've seen with your own eyes for the past year. Sarah spoke up. I think I speak for everyone here when I say we'd follow you anywhere. You're the best boss any of us have ever had, pregnant or not. Marcus can go choke. Everyone laughed at that, the tension breaking. But I saw Janet's face in the doorway, and I knew this wasn't over. After the meeting, Janet pulled me aside. We need to talk to legal. The legal meeting happened that afternoon. Me, Janet, Devin, and 2 lawyers from our corporate counsel. They read Marcus's email, asked me questions about our history, took notes on everything. This could be considered harassment. One of the lawyers said, a woman named Patricia, who reminded me of my 10th grade English teacher. He's no longer employed here. He's contacting current employees with false information designed to undermine a superior, and there's a documented history of him engaging in this behavior while employed. We could pursue a cease and desist. Do it, I said immediately. I want him to know there are consequences. Rebecca, Janet said carefully, are you sure? This could escalate things. Make them more public. He made it public when he emailed my team. I'm sure. They sent the cease and desist that day. Marcus's lawyer responded within 48 hours with a counterclaim that the email had been well-intentioned advice from a concerned former colleague, that I was being oversensitive, that this was harassment on my part for pursuing legal action against someone exercising free speech. It was bureaucratic nonsense, but it was also exhausting. I was 32 weeks pregnant, working full-time, preparing for a baby, and now dealing with legal drama because my ex-boyfriend couldn't let go of the fact that I was more successful than him. My mom came back up in February, said she'd stay until after the baby was born. I was grateful because I was so tired I could barely think straight, and she cooked actual meals and made sure I ate them and forced me to put my feet up at night instead of working on my laptop until midnight. You need to take care of yourself, she said one evening, physically removing my computer from my hands. That baby needs you healthy. The accounts need me focused. The accounts will survive. You're not indispensable to the company, Rebecca. You're indispensable to that child. Priority check. She was right. I knew she was right. But slowing down felt like admitting defeat, like proving Marcus right about pregnancy, making me less capable. Sarah came over one Saturday in late February with baby shower gifts, even though we'd already done the official shower at work. She had this huge bag from Target, and she started pulling out onesies and pacifiers and tiny socks that made my heart hurt. You're going to be such a good mom, she said, folding a onesie that said, worth the wait. How do you know? I've never even held a baby. Because you're you. You're tough and smart and you don't quit. That's like 90% of parenting from what I hear. The other 10% is just Googling things and hoping you're not completely screwing up. I laughed, but I was also crying because pregnancy hormones are no joke. I'm scared, Sarah. What if I can't do this? Then you figure it out. Like you always do. You didn't know how to handle Marcus's sabotage until you did. You didn't know how to run the Vertex campaign until you did. You'll figure out the baby stuff too. The baby decided to make her entrance 3 weeks early, on a Tuesday morning in March. I'd been having weird cramping all night but wrote it off as Braxton Hicks because I still had so much to finish at work. But by 9 a.m., when I was in a meeting with a client and had to excuse myself because the contractions were so intense, I couldn't deny it anymore. Sarah drove me to the hospital because my mom had run to the grocery store and I couldn't reach her. The whole drive, I was timing contractions on my phone app and trying to call my mom between breaths. You're doing great, Sarah kept saying, which was clearly a lie because I was gripping the door handle so hard I thought it might break off. This is crazy, I managed between contractions. I have the Vertex expansion meeting on Thursday. I haven't briefed the team on the new pitch. Rebecca, you're literally in labor. The meeting can wait. But no. No buts. You're having a baby. Work does not matter right now. She was right. She was absolutely right. But part of me was still making mental notes about what I needed to delegate, who needed to be CC'd on what emails, which clients needed personal calls versus updates from Sarah. My mom met us at the hospital, looking panicked and excited, and like she might cry. She held my hand through the admission process, and Sarah stayed until my mom kicked her out with promises to call with updates. Labor was 14 hours of hell. There's no other way to describe it. Everyone talks about the miracle of birth, and sure, the end result is pretty miraculous, but the process is just pain and exhaustion and wondering if your body is actually going to split in half. But then, at 11:47 p.m. on March 11th, 2025, my daughter was born. 6 pounds, 4 ounces, with dark hair and this tiny scrunched face that was the most perfect thing I'd ever seen. They put her on my chest, and she opened her eyes and looked at me, and I swear something fundamental shifted in the universe. Every hard thing I'd been through, every sacrifice, every difficult decision, it all made sense in that moment. This was why. This little person was why. "Hi, baby girl," I whispered, and she made this tiny sound, and I fell completely, irrevocably in love. "She's perfect," my mom said, crying openly now. "Rebecca, she's absolutely perfect." I named her Emma Catherine Winters. Emma because I'd always loved the name, Catherine after my mom. No mention of Marcus anywhere on the birth certificate. As far as I was concerned, he'd given up the right to any part of her the day he said he didn't want to be involved. The first week home was chaos. Emma was tiny and perfect and cried constantly, and I had no idea what I was doing. My mom stayed, thank God, because she'd been through this before and could tell the difference between hungry crying and tired crying and gassy crying, all of which sounded exactly the same to me. I tried to keep up with work emails, checking my phone between feeding sessions, but my mom literally took my phone away on day 3. "Stop. You're on maternity leave. That means you're not working. Focus on your daughter. But the team will manage without you for 3 months. You're not the only competent person at that company. Let them do their jobs while you do yours, which right now is being a mom." So I did. I stopped checking email constantly. I stopped worrying about meetings I was missing. I focused on Emma, on learning her patterns, on figuring out how to function on 2-hour sleep increments. It was hard. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, and I'd launched major marketing campaigns and ended toxic relationships and rebuilt my entire life in the span of a year. But this was different. This was relentless and exhausting, and there was no finish line, no measurable success metrics, just this tiny human depending on me for everything. But it was also amazing. The first time Emma smiled at me, around week 5, I cried. When she started sleeping in 3-hour stretches, I felt like I'd won the lottery. Every tiny milestone felt monumental because it was ours. Not mine and Marcus's. Mine and Emma's. Our little team of 2. My mom went back to Indiana after 6 weeks, once Emma and I had established a routine. I cried when she left, which probably also had something to do with exhaustion and hormones, but I was genuinely going to miss having her there. "You call me if you need anything," she said at the door, hugging me carefully around the baby in my arms. "I mean it. Middle of the night, whatever. I'm 3 hours away." "I know, Mom. Thank you. For everything." That's what family does. We show up. I thought about that after she left. About family. About how Marcus wasn't family, not really. He was biology, genetics, but he wasn't someone who showed up. He wasn't someone Emma could count on. And that was okay because she had me and my mom and Sarah, who came over twice a week with groceries and offered to hold the baby while I showered. We were building our own definition of family, and it was enough. I started getting back into work mode around week 10 of my leave. Just emails at first, catching up on what I'd missed, checking in with the team. Sarah had done an amazing job covering my accounts, but there were a few things that needed my specific input, decisions only I could make. The plan was to go back to the office part-time starting in June, work from home the rest of the time, and figure out childcare gradually. I'd found a highly recommended nanny, interviewed her 3 times, checked every reference, and still felt guilty about leaving Emma with someone else. "You're allowed to have a career and be a mom," Sarah reminded me when I expressed this for the 100th time.
It's not an either-or. You can do both. But could I? Really? Marcus's words from that email kept echoing in my head. Distracted. Cognitively impacted. Less effective. What if he was right? What if trying to do both meant doing neither well? Then I'd look at Emma, sleeping peacefully in her bassinet, and I'd remember why I was doing this. I was showing her that women can have ambitions. That mothers can be professionals. That you don't have to choose between being a good parent and being good at your job. You just have to work really hard and probably be tired all the time and accept that nothing will be perfect, but it can still be good. My first day back at the office part-time was a Tuesday in mid-June. Emma was 3 months old. The nanny had been with us for 2 weeks on a trial basis, and I was a nervous wreck. The first day back at the office felt like stepping into a different life. The air smelled the same, that mix of coffee, printer ink, and ambition, but everything about me had changed. My body was softer, my priorities sharper, my patience shorter. I wasn't just Rebecca Winters, Vice President of Strategic Accounts anymore. I was Rebecca Winters, mother of Emma Catherine, a woman who had built herself back from ashes and refused to apologize for it. Sarah was waiting by my desk with her usual grin. "You look amazing," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Motherhood suits you." Terrifyingly powerful vibe. I laughed. That's just the caffeine and sleep deprivation. Still, it felt good, being back, using my brain again for something beyond bottle schedules and burp cloths. Emma had been up half the night, but somehow, I felt strong. Different. Unbreakable. Janet called me into her office around noon. The sunlight caught the framed Vertex article on her wall, the campaign that redefined tech branding. My campaign. Our campaign. "Sit down," she said, her tone softer than usual. "I wanted to see how you're adjusting before the storm starts again." "I'm good," I said. Tired, but good. Ready to dive back in. She smiled, but there was something in her eyes, pride, maybe even affection. "Rebecca, do you have any idea how far you've come? A year ago, you were fighting for your job, your reputation, your sanity. Now, you're leading one of the most successful teams in the company, and doing it while raising a baby." "I had a lot of help," I said. "Sarah, the team, my mom." "You had support," she corrected, "but you did the work. Don't ever downplay that." She paused. "There's one more thing. The board wants you to lead our new mentorship initiative for women in leadership. They want someone who's lived it, not just read about it." For a second, I couldn't speak. After everything, the gaslighting, the betrayal, the nights crying over a man who'd tried to erase me, now I was being asked to help other women fight the same battles. "When does it start?" I finally asked. "As soon as you're ready," Janet said. "We're calling it Project Athena." The name hit me like a punch to the heart, the goddess of wisdom and war. Perfect. That evening, I walked home instead of taking the train. The air was warm, the city alive. I stopped by the park where I used to sit with Marcus on lazy Sundays, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt nothing. He was just a lesson now. A necessary one. When I got home, my mom was in the living room, rocking Emma. The baby looked up when she heard my voice and smiled. That big, gummy, innocent smile that somehow healed every scar on my soul. "Hey, sunshine," I whispered, kissing her forehead. "Mommy's home." As I held her, I thought about the word home. How it used to mean walls and routines and someone else's approval. Now it meant freedom. Choice. Peace. That night, after Emma fell asleep, I sat by the window with my laptop and started writing the outline for Project Athena. The first line read, "Never let anyone convince you that your light is too bright. They'll call it arrogance, they'll call it instability, but it's just brilliance they can't control." I smiled, because that was it. That was the lesson. Marcus had tried to silence me. Life had tried to test me. But I kept going, not because I wasn't broken, but because I refused to stay that way. When I finally closed the laptop, I caught my reflection in the glass. The woman staring back looked tired, yes. But she also looked strong. Certain. Whole. And for the first time in a long, long time, I whispered the words I'd always wanted to believe. I made it. On my own terms.
Outside, Chicago glittered, not as a battlefield anymore, but as a home. And in the soft hum of the city below, I heard Emma's quiet breathing from the next room. My legacy, my reason, my proof that even after the deepest betrayal, a woman can still rebuild, stronger, wiser, and completely free.